Thank you very much for your attendance and your time. Today is the last of the 4 topics on IRPA and how it can help support the Office of the CFO or the finance function. And the last topic today specifically will focus on where we can use IRPA or Intelligent Robotic Process Automation in the use case or scenario around the financial close. And there are lots of activities that can feed into this particular process. And we'll discuss some of those today in this particular session. And now let's meet the presenters. Edison John is our Senior Finance Specialist. So he'll be talking a lot about some of the use cases that we're using internally at SAP from that perspective. And again, Hemant Rach, who's the Solution Management at APJ, he'll be talking about why SAP. And I'm your host today. I'm Mike Vorius. I'm the Regional Director for Office of the CFO in APJ. So the agenda today will follow pretty much what we've got on screen here. I'll do a brief introduction as to what we're seeing in the marketplace, what we're seeing our customers, and what we're seeing from some of the experts in the field out there around IRPA. Edison will take us through some of the use cases, as I mentioned before, around intelligent finance closing. And Hemant will talk to us a little bit about why SAP. There will be a short poll at the end, and then we can open up for Q&A. If you have questions in the meantime that you can't wait until we get to the end, please feel free to put them in the chat, and we can address them at an appropriate time or place where we can pause. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll kick that off. This is a typical scene that we see far too often, and particularly now in light of the situation that every country is going through in the pandemic. We're seeing a lot of customers spending a lot of time after hours doing lots of manual tasks, and this has impacts right across the workforce, right across every single company. And as we're moving more to a cloud-based environment where people are working from home, this is pretty much a common scenario. So it's probably not one of those the typical areas that we'd like to think that we've got to look forward to in the future. This is my take on it. This is my type of scenario where you've got time to spend doing what you want to do on the weekends, after hours, whatever. So we all look forward to the time when we can travel and we can do all this. But the idea of having some freedom to do what you want to do instead of completing some of those month-end tasks and some of those manual mundane routine areas. And what we've got through a Hackett group, and they've come up with a statistic which is very, very interesting. Around roughly 19.2% through automation, the labour-induced process, we can reduce that cost going forward. So, that just means we can utilise our people a lot better. We can utilise them, put them into areas where, they can sort of add more value. And I'll get to that a little bit more of that slide in a minute. So that's an interesting KPI, an interesting statistic in that sense. So what are the analysts saying? We've heard a lot of talk around IRPA. It's a very important topic, and it's something that we discuss with our customers. Even if it's not in finance, we're always talking to them about other ways of doing things more efficiently. And Forrester had made a statement here a couple of years ago. Then they predicted in 2021, which is the year that we're in, that automation becomes a business imperative. So it's no longer a thing that you talk about and you bolt on and you do it as a matter of, an enhancement. It becomes an imperative. It becomes part of your everyday life. So this is the way that, a lot of these analysts are talking, and IDC made a good prediction as well. So they're saying by 2022, 45% of the repetitive work tasks will be automated. So the only way you can do that is with some of this intelligent technologies that SAP brings to the table. And, we are conscious there are a number of other different solutions around there, but Hemant will talk later around why SAP is perfectly positioned to take advantage of some of our own intelligent technologies in that sense. And I referenced this before. So why is it important? So this is sort of a bit of a snapshot of where we've come from and where we're going to. And, we started back in the 60s and in an industrial automation, and we've moved through to the 90s. But the interesting change here is the reference to the increasing value that we can bring to high value tasks and the reduction in the repetitive tasks. And that correlates with an increase in the amount of automation that we can use. So by the time we get to the 2010s, 20s and beyond, I expect this particular graph to sort of, take a trajectory further up the productivity scale from that perspective. So, so this is why it becomes important, because we need to be able to spend more time doing the value-added tasks and less time doing the repetitive, mundane tasks, because that doesn't really add much value to the organisation. So we're going to hand over now to Edison, and he'll take us through some of those use cases for the intelligent financial close. Over to you, Edison.
Thanks a lot, Mike. So welcome everyone to the session. And so just a little bit about me. So I'm from the corporate financial reporting team, specifically working on the corporate accounting reporting principles and infrastructure team. So this team essentially comprises of team members who are working on different topics around the financial close area, as well as other areas in terms of different projects when it comes to the corporate financial aspects. So maybe let me just kick it off with a very simple question. Have you experienced a month-end, quarter-end, or year-end close? Now, for the finance colleagues, this is really part and parcel of our job description. In essence, we are constantly involved in some aspect of a period and closing cycle. So, but for the other colleagues who are not part of the finance organization, maybe it's something different for you. Next slide, please, Mike.
Sure.
And basically, I just want to talk a little bit about what exactly happens within the R2R or record to report organization. Just a little bit of like an fun graphic if you want. So what my friends think I do, perhaps maybe respond to a few emails a day. What my parents think I do in terms of, okay, since the word finance is involved in the organization, it means, moving money around. There's interesting, managing money. What my stakeholders think I do, perhaps as a service organization, the idea is to have coverage 24 hours, more or less. And this is true, I must admit, to an extent, especially when it comes to the periods when the activity is, or the period close activity is, the volume increases. So specifically around quarter-end closing as well as year-end closing. And that's exactly what means, what I can talk about, like in what I actually do. There is definitely coverage that is provided by the R2R colleagues, and in terms of the support for any sort of closing activities, 24/7 more or less, with the transition happening from the Manila Shared Service Organization to Prague to the Buenos Aires Shared Services Organization. There are many different aspects involved as well in terms of the closing process. So, R2R can deal with several tasks when it comes to a closing process, and it is quite time sensitive as well, because as you know, we have clear deadlines as to when we need to report, so there is quite a lot of time pressure involved. Next slide, please, Mike. So what does the closing look like today? In terms of the closing activities, It's relatively stable, as you can see from the x-axis, so working days in a month, and y-axis being the workload. It's relatively stable towards the first few months and first few days of the month. And when we approach the end of the month, or typically like the working days where the volume is the highest, then you can see the massive peak happening. So the workload doubles, triples, it becomes quite a lot. And the reporting and analysis, as you can see, really takes place somewhere in the middle of those working days where the peak is still hitting. I mean, where we're kind of coming down towards the working load peak, but that is generally when the reporting and analysis aspects kick in, and you can start working on the financial statements more or less, or review and analyze the financial statements. Next slide, please, Mike. Again, just to give a bit of an idea of what specifically this means. So we analyzed some data from 2019. The first graph you can see in terms of what were the number of transactions that took place specifically on the working days. So you can see a massive spike from between working day 0 to 5. And the bottom graph shows you what's the average deviation between the months. So the orange bars representing the tasks, and the red bars representing the average deviation within that particular month. So again, you can see the month of April is quite high. That's typically like Q1. Similar for July. December as well, that's also pretty high. So that is, of course, when we're doing our year-end closing, where the activity just spikes up. Next slide, please, Mike. And this is what we want to envision actually for the closing of tomorrow. So instead of having the reporting and analysis starting somewhere in between of the closing activities, we want to have a continuous closing. So the closing activities, I think the activity would pretty much be stable throughout the working day of the month. We, of course, do foresee a spike within the peak working days, so towards the end of the month, and then it would settle back down to the normal levels. But throughout this entire process, we envision that the reporting and analysis aspect would be a continuous flow. Next slide, please, Mike. So just imagine, as I said, there is no month-end closing anymore. So whatever work that we're doing in terms of the transactions, the reporting, all of it is happening more or less in real time, and the information is ready and available at basically the click of a button. Next slide, please, Mike. And to help us achieve this, so this is the purpose of our R2R automation swarm team. And the way we've set up our team, we really we have gathered different colleagues from different parts of the finance organization who are experts in their own respective fields. So we have colleagues from the strategic and innovation team, process management, of course, shared services R2R, and CFR as well. We have a few colleagues present. And of course, us representing the business side, we also have our counterparts from the IT side. So in terms of the collaboration, I mean, we have very close collaboration with the IT, core IT folks as well. And as you can see, there are quite a few of them who are supporting the R2R automation swarm team. So the entire swarm team actually works with an agile mindset and values, wherein we have continuous touch points as to what is the plan in terms of what we are currently working on. So we have regular sprint reviews, we have regular retrospectives in terms of planning and putting to action what we need to do for our particular automation. The backlog that we currently have consists of like the hyper automation topics for financial closing tasks. One of the bigger projects that we have is the move to advanced financial closing. So this is the next version or the next iterative version of the financial closing cockpit that we currently have. And I'll speak a little bit more about that in the next few slides. The pilot entity for advanced financial closing will be Switzerland. And I want to speak a bit about some of the results that we can actually talk about in terms of what we have achieved so far. So prior to the formation of our Swarm team, we did have automations in place in FCC, but they were by a third-party solution provider actually. But eventually we said, okay, like hold on, we have great tools present within our own standard solution, so why don't we use them? So it was a process that took a few months, but we were able to transition out those automations by the third-party solution provider, and we brought in our own automations in place. And yeah, maybe I'll speak a bit more about the next few slides. Could you skip to the next slide, please, Mike? So these are the closing automations that we have presently with IRPA. So this is something that we worked on last year, and we were able to successfully go live with these automations. We went live with the SOX balance sheet review, asset depreciation run, general bad debt provision, assessment distribution cycle runs, and the review results of the cycle runs. So we went live for 122 subsidiaries that are currently active in FCC. We deployed 8 digital workers in total for these IRPA automations. And clearly there was quite a big impact because it affected quite a lot of actual users in terms of the work that they were doing prior to the go live of these automations. And the time period for this was around 6 months. So from the point in time when the project started to the global go live. Next slide, please, Mike. And here are some of the examples I would like to talk about. I'll speak about 1 or 2. The rest is, it gives a bit more information and more detail, but please feel free to have a read yourself. I want to speak a little bit about the SOX balance sheet review automations that we implemented. So this was something that it was a time-consuming task that the local chief accountants needed to report as per the SOX requirements in terms of what were the balance sheet movements for that particular quarter. And it was a very manual task wherein they would need to go into the balance sheet and download the information. They would need to then do an analysis of what were the variances. They would need to ensure that the variances basically they need to meet a particular threshold. Then they need to provide their comments and then basically have this information stored somewhere or rather either sent to or made available to the SOX, the GRC colleagues, or the auditors if required. But with this IRPA automation, the entire process is essentially automated from the point in time where the where the review needs to happen. So the automation would actually automatically go into the transaction, pull up the report that needs to, and it is already programmed to have all the significant variances of the balance sheet accounts with the comparisons from current quarter to previous previous year end values. So it will already give you this list of the variances within the balance sheet account with an absolute change above a certain threshold. And it would automatically just filter out these set of accounts and drop them to, and send the LCAs an email with this Excel list. So the LCA would, on the working day itself, would automatically receive this email with this pre-prepared Excel list with all the accounts identified where they need to review and they need to comment. And when the LCA is done with this review, then they finally need to just upload this the reviewed file into the financial closing cockpit. So in that regard, there is a lot of complexity that has been now reduced into very simple process steps. Next slide, please, Mike. I would like to, I think there's a question that we just saw. How does the SOX balance sheet review work with balance sheet substantiation solution? Okay, perhaps maybe you can get to that towards the end. But yeah, let me just continue with this explanation of the other IRPA solutions that we have, that other IRPA bots that we have deployed. I want to speak a bit more about the general bad debt provision because this was something that took, that was rather complex in terms of the setup. And again, in terms of the benefit, we would consider it as to that it did provide quite a high benefit because it was, again, a very manual task that took quite some time to complete towards, especially during a period end close, to be able to reduce the time spent on this particular task was a great benefit. So in this particular bot that we deployed, it needed to basically act in accordance with the International Financial Reporting Standard, IFRS 9, wherein we needed to record the expected credit losses based on historical losses and forward-looking information. So what this bot does, or what this IRPA bot does, is that it runs the general bad debt report, either gross or net, depending on what is the requirement for the company code. So this one is also, it's possible for us to have a setting in place where it's able to read what is the requirement for that particular company code. Should the bad debt run be run in gross or on net? So it runs this report and it's able to then pick up the postings that need to be made for that particular quarter. So it would calculate the general bad debt provisions and then automatically post it into the general FI ledger, and also subsequently reverse those postings at the end of the next quarter. So the entire step is automated. So there's no human interaction whatsoever. So the user just needs to, would just be notified, or would only be notified if there are any issues that pop up. But apart from that, it's purely automated. Next slide, please, Mike. So these are just some of the process flows that talk about the IRPA bots that we have, the solution that we have deployed. I'll leave that for you to review. I believe the slides or the recording will be shared. So Mike, could you skip to the next slides? The ones that, next one, please. Once more. Yes, thank you. So this was essentially like the timeline that we want, or maybe, yeah, if I should say, how it was deployed in terms of the project phase. So we had an iterative model in terms of like the incremental changes that would be brought on by these deployments. And we worked through it, of course, starting from the development and testing phase, wherein a lot of input and feedback was required, and a lot of collaboration was required between the business side and the IT side. And then the initial release would be done via a pilot phase. So we would select the important entities in terms of, okay, which ones are the most complex. First tackle those, and then we can roll it out to the other entities. So again, it was a waved approach, perhaps picking 2 major entities per region. And then in the next month, and we would then slowly roll it out to the other entities. So in terms of the full entire process, we started sometime in January. And by the time Q2 2020 rolled out, we were live with all the IRP tasks for all ISP company codes. Next slide, please, Mike. So as I mentioned in the earlier slide before, the idea that we want, the idea that we have envisioned for the future is a continuous close at R2R. And what this means is 2 aspects. So one being the foundation being the shared services framework. So this is a tool that we are currently working on at the moment, which would be deployed also sometime in Q3, would go live. So it is essentially like a harmonization of the R2R stakeholder communication and the automation of end-to-end R2R processes. So the focus for this particular tool would be the daily manual tasks that the shared services need to do, the requests that are coming into them pretty much every day, as well as the automated tasks. So this basically ensures that anything that is that has the possibility of being automated would definitely be a candidate in terms of the priority of being automated. And then, of course, on the other hand, we also have the S/4HANA Cloud for Advanced Financial Closing. So this would essentially be an orchestration platform for transparent and highly automated close, purely focusing on the financial closing tasks. And the basis of this, or being supported by all of this, would be the intelligent robotic process automation. Again, thinking about, what are the standard tasks and how can we simplify it? And then, of course, how can we automate it? And as Mike mentioned, the possibility of automating the repetitive tasks is quite high, wherein we would then relieve sort of the workload of the other colleagues to focus on areas where they can add more value. Next slide, please, Mike. So again, just a little bit more about what the shared services framework will look like, or in terms of what it brings. So it is essentially an analytics and performance measurement capabilities are inbuilt in terms of what are the type of requests coming in? What's the turnaround time for those requests? It will essentially form a communication exchange platform. So idea is it will remove the need for email communication to a harmonized ticketing system. And because it's a ticketing system, it will also be quite easy in terms of monitoring, in terms of tracking what is the latest status of a particular ticket. There is the possibility of workflows that can be used for this ticketing system as well. So if a particular ticket needs to be approved or needs to be looked at by another team, it can trigger this workflow. So the go live, as I mentioned, for this shared services framework is in Q3 with a pilot entity, which would once more be SAP Switzerland. Next slide, please, Mike. And again, just to talk about the advanced financial closing, what it will look like. So on the left-hand side, you can see a screenshot of what we presently have in the financial closing. So the current functionality of FCC is also quite considerable in terms of the coordination and standardization. It also provides some sort of flexibility that we can use in terms of what are the company codes, what are the tasks that can be associated with those particular company codes. But when we move to AFC, there is a greater level of flexibility that is provided by this tool. So we have a lot more customizability that we can deploy, that we can use in terms of we can set up different tasks for different regions. We can have an orchestration platform wherein you can see the different closing tasks specifically for your company code, per your time zone, per your user. So this is something that really improves the transparency in terms of what can be provided in AFC. Again, from a monitoring perspective, it is definitely superior to FCC because it provides you real-time information as to the status of the tasks. So if you are a local chief accountant, you can immediately go into one of the tiles and see, okay, what is the latest in terms of the closing procedures that are happening for that particular month. And again, it's the user experience in AFC is a smoother one, if I can say that, because there is a level of intuitiveness inbuilt, wherein if you have some sort of issues or if you are unsure of where to click or where to go, there is a very useful help section that can actually guide you as to what it is that you're looking at in the present screen, and a very helpful information section that explains a lot of the features that are available in AFC. So yeah, I think with that, I've covered pretty much the topics I would like to cover. Next slide, please, Mike. I think that's the last slide.
Yeah, that's the last slide on that sense. But before I hand over to Hamid, just to come back on that question that was in the chat. Now, the reference to Sarbanes-Oxley or SOX and the use case that you defined around balance sheet reconciliation or substantiation. I suppose, are you familiar with the Blackline solution?
So this is something that we were working. I mean, we were approached about it sometime last year, but at least from the IRPA automation swarm team, we did not heavily get involved in this topic. But it is I've heard about it, but it's not something that we're presently working on in the IRPA automation swarm team.
Okay, but as far as the as far as you're concerned in what you're doing on behalf of what you're doing for SAP in this space. You're fully compliant with the SOX requirements there.
Yes.
On how
Yes.
you're automating that. So, look, I think that's a question that we can sort of take offline, and we'll come back with some potential answers. But for those that are out there that are already using the Sarbanes-Oxley Blackline solution, I would probably suggest you continue to do that. But, there are alternatives to that extent. All right. Thank you very much, Edison. That was an excellent overview of how SAP's moving in that IRPA direction. And that sort of moves us now a good segue into the next topic around, well, why SAP? And no one better to talk about that than our own Hammett Ratch, who's an expert in that space, being the product solution owner. I'll hand over to you, Hammett.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike. And I think thank you very much, Edison, as well, in talking about that how we internally also utilizing the SAP Intelligent RPA capability for financial closing. And one of the important point which I noted from Edison's presentation, which you might have noted as well, is that within 6 months of going live, they have scaled to 122 subsidiaries, which actually talks about how stable, how robust the SAP Intelligent RPA solution is, and how you can scale it for any enterprise without any iota of doubt in your mind. And of course, you can utilize SAP Intelligent RPA when it comes to financial closing for multiple tasks, be it pre and post closing tasks, like, for example, master data management or managing the posting periods, foreign currency updates, etc. You can also consume ready to use S4HANA pre-built bots for financial processes. So we, in SAP Intelligent RPA, have lot of pre-built content for each of LOB, including finance, and some of the bots are really, really useful in financial closing process. For example, manual adjustment. Every business will have some manual adjustments to be done before closing, right? Now, typically, those are handled manually in the Excel sheet with emails coming in. With this pre-built bot and the content, you can manage those adjustments automatically. So bots can check regularly the incoming emails, validate those adjustments coming in, get into the financial module and adjust or do those entries. And interestingly, we also have capability both UI based automation as well as the GUI based, as well as the API based, which means these bots can work both with UI or API. So you can make it, if you have very heavy volume, leverage the API capability to perform such kind of large transactions, large number of entries coming in using SAP Intelligent RPA. You can combine it as a custom process. So the third option is, of course, you can also create the custom bot with a low code, no code studio. You can combine it with other technologies like, say, for example, workflow for the approval processes, right? You can use the tool as a design tool of SAP Intelligent RPA Cloud Studio or Desktop Studio for creating custom robots associated with financial closing. Those could be like, for example, payment reconciliation. Many customers, like I'll give example of one of the customers in Thailand, for example, they are using SAP Intelligent RPA for bank payment reconciliation, where bot gets into the bank's site, downloads the statement, gets into SAP system, downloads the reports, does the matching, reconciles the records, and then sends the email to the finance operations team to ensure that they can, whatever exceptions are there, are handled and managed, right? There are customers and many success stories who are utilizing SAP Intelligent RPA for financial closing related tasks. And one such story I would like to touch upon is the Wanhua Chemical. Can we go to the next slide, please? So Wanhua Chemical is one of the largest chemical companies in the world, and problem they had was typical in any business is about preparing the P&L report, right? It's a standard process where you need to, as part of your monthly process, as part of your quarterly process, you need to share the P&L reports, different kind of reports within your finance operations to management, to stakeholders. And this used to take a lot of time. Multiple systems to aggregate the data, to reconcile the data, and then prepare the sheet in a specific format. Every business will have some custom requirement of reporting, right? From A business to B business, they will have a different format, how they look at the reporting or finance data. Of course, key of those finance data is already available within the SAP S/4HANA system. Now they utilize the bot to carry out these aggregation of data from legacy systems, legacy application into the ERP system, doing the reconciliation, and then creating the P&L reports. And you see the result that more than 90% of efficiency they gained with automation of this P&L reporting as part of their monthly closing and quarterly closing process, right? And almost 4,700 hours of manual work is saved. Now, finance operation colleagues can focus on the higher value task of planning, budgeting, and analysis instead of focusing on collecting the data from multiple systems, reconciling it, and then preparing a report, right? So this is how SAP Intelligent RPA helped Wanhua Chemicals to successfully leverage the technology to automate the processes. Next slide, please. And this is brings me to the question, why SAP Intelligent RPA? So I'll just quickly touch upon 2 or 3 key areas of the differentiation that why SAP Intelligent RPA. One of the foremost reason is businesses are running the core processes on SAP applications, right? Whether it's a SAP S/4HANA, whether it's advanced financial closing or central finance, we have the native connector. SAP Intelligent RPA offers the native connectors for SAP GUI, SAP Fiori, which gives you unprecedented scalability, robustness, and capability to automate multiple processes in SAP or outside SAP, right? These native connectors are unique to SAP Intelligent RPA. None other tools provide in the market these native connectors. Plus, we have capability of the pre-built best practice coming from the product team. So a lot of best practice content, the one which I shared with you, are coming from the S/4HANA product management team, which you can leverage out of the box, configure it, and start using it. So it accelerates your time to automation, time to get the ROI quickly, right? Third capability is SAP Intelligent RPA is part of the business technology platform. Now, this business technology platform offers capability where you can utilize multiple technologies to achieve your hyper automation scenario. I think Edison touched upon it, that how they are planning now as a next phase after automating financial closing, now planning to go to the hyper automation scenario where they will utilize multiple technologies like workflow, chatbot. All these are part of the single platform which seamlessly works with SAP Intelligent RPA. So with SAP Business Technology Platform, you get a complete portfolio of process automation, right from process mining to process discovery to automation and again monitoring. So a kind of a virtuous cycle which you can create to continuously improve your processes and being agile. So you can always change your processes, seeing, monitoring how it's working, what all processes you need to change and then improve using the automation tool like SAP Intelligent RPA. Second reason is SAP Intelligent RPA is enterprise grade capability, and Edison touched upon it, that how internally we move to 122 subsidiaries running the closing process on SAP Intelligent RPA, which is one of the crucial process for any business, including us, as we are listed company and regulated by different stock exchanges and markets, right? So in addition, you find that when you are utilizing bots created using SAP Intelligent RPA, they are very fast in execution. There are many challenges done like rpachallenge.com, where it has been proven for doing the same task, SAP Intelligent RPA created bots are 8 to 20 times faster, right? So same processes you can execute quickly with less number of bots using SAP Intelligent RPA. It's completely secured. It's a hybrid environment where orchestration and monitoring is on cloud while execution happens on premise. So all the data, all your financial data remains within your IT landscape, and execution happens on your IT landscape in on premise. The desktop agent runs the robots within your laptop, desktop, virtualized environment, virtual machines, and it's not on the cloud. Only orchestration and monitoring is on the cloud, which gives you the scalability, which means tomorrow you may have 5 bots, day after you may have 50 bots, and maybe in future you have 100 bots running. So you need not worry about the cloud infrastructure because that's taken care of. Next slide, please. So we touched upon the key aspect, how technically it's different, how content you get with SAP Intelligent RPA. And the last point which I just want to touch upon is the commercially also it's very competitive, and you get the advantage with SAP Intelligent RPA, right? Uh, it is simply based on unattended and attended bots. So how many bots you would like to use, that also in concurrent, which means how many concurrent bots you are using. The pricing is based on that. There is no separate pricing for design time, for creation of the custom bots. You may have 5, you may have 10, maybe 20 developers within your organization or partners. Need not worry, right? There is no separate license. There is no license for the central orchestration and monitoring. As I mentioned, gives you the capability to start small with 5, 10 bots, but scale it to 100. And you also save from the indirect access license perspective when you utilize SAP Intelligent RPA vis-a-vis other RPA tools. So in nutshell, you get unmatched capability when it comes to processes surrounding SAP application. You get best of breed content, best practices, hyper automation ready platform, and of course, competitive pricing to ensure that you get the ROI quickly and start reaping the benefits of automation from day one. Next slide, please. Yes, so I think with this, I would like to hand over to Mike for the poll. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Hamid. Look, fantastic presentation on why SAP and why is it so important to our own customers. I mean, nobody does IRPA on SAP better than SAP. So yeah, great story. Thank you. Look, I just wanted to take a couple of minutes of your time just to sort of gauge some interest from you, and let's just see how you found today's session. And would you like anybody from SAP to give you a context? So I'll launch that poll now. I'll give everybody, we'll give everybody 30 seconds just to sort of, if you don't mind, just giving us a little bit of feedback, helps us improve going forward. So a little bit of robotics process technology for us as presenters as well. So, and hopefully the content you found valuable today. So good. Okay. Yeah, the question around does anybody want us to contact them? That's quite common that nobody wants us to contact them. But look, at the end of the day, when these questions do come up, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. I think it's very, very valuable, and I think there are a lot of value in that sense. All right, I'm going to end the polling now, but thank you very much for your inputs, and we'll go from there. I can share the results with you. So there we go. How do we find today? Yep, great. Somewhat interesting. Boring. Well, I'm glad no one said it was boring. So that's fantastic. That's a good positive for ourselves. But yeah, so one or two people would like us to give us a call. So we'll be in contact with you in the next couple of days or weeks, and we'll look forward to engaging with you in that sense. Stop sharing there. Right, what I wanted to do now is just sort of really open it up to any Q&A. If there's anything else in there that we haven't covered, let me just check the chat. Q&A, I think that was more around the black line. So I hope that question around black line answered your question. If not, you can feel free to come off mute or put another response into the Q&A, and we can follow that up for you. Somebody in the chat has written, is it applicable only for S/4HANA Cloud? Hemant, are you able to answer that?
Yeah, sure. So no, it's applicable for any financial system. So when you utilize SAP Intelligent RPA for automating financial closing tasks, you can use it for any ERP, including S/4HANA, cloud, on-premise, ECC, or even third-party financial systems, right? But we do have some best practice pre-built content for S/4HANA. So customers who are already on S/4HANA can leverage those best practices with free content available from SAP, right? So, but yes, as a tool, it works with SAP and non-SAP applications alike.
All right, perfect. I don't think there's any more questions in the chat, and we're nearly at the top of the hour. So I will. Got any questions? Come off mute if you like, and or put it in the chat. Thank our presenters today. Edison, thank you. Great content, great use cases around what we're doing within the SAP. Within SAP itself. So yes, we do use our own technologies to help with our own innovation transformation. So, we're all in this together. So for the sake of a better word, Hemant, thank you once again for your continued support right through this series. I look forward to some good adventures in the next 6 months or the next time that we catch up. But from that perspective, I'm signing off now. Mike Voris. Look forward to catching up with everybody soon.